Well, welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk, where we have coffee table conversations with key leaders on important topics. I'm here with Jodi Seidler and Crystal Bartlett.
Yeah.
We are having a women's-only conversation, and we're really excited, but this is going to be on a conversation that really affects all leaders. Jodi, Crystal, can you say hi to everyone and introduce yourselves?
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jodi. I work at Elim Fellowship in the Global Ministries department. I am the assistant director, and one of my main roles is recruiting people to go to the nations and matching people up, their callings and destiny, with what the Lord has for them overseas. So that is what I do.
Yes, Jodi. And I am Crystal Bartlett. I work for Elim Fellowship also. I am the Go Team coordinator on our global ministry teams. And so my heart is to equip and send young workers to the field and the harvest in the nations and here in the States.
And you're also children's ministry
Oh,
pastor,
yes.
right?
Yes. How did I forget this?
I
I'm
got
sitting
it.
in
I
EGC.
know.
And also I work for Elim Gospel Church, and I'm the children's ministry pastor here. And literally very little of my job has to do with actually sitting in the classroom with my tiny humans. A lot of it has to do with equipping my volunteers, preparing them for Sundays, and making sure that they are ready to just minister to our tiny humans.
Love it.
And you both do it so well, which is why you're here in this room. We're having this conversation with you two. So today's Let's Talk is all about our new series, Discovery. And as always, you'll have the emails hit your inbox every Monday with articles and resources that really continue this conversation. But today we're going to have a conversation which I'm really excited about, because honestly, it's a conversation that we really have constantly at the EF office, and that's the idea as us as leaders and how we lead with our teams, with those we mentor, with our volunteers, in that aspect. And as leaders, we want to lead well. We want to steward well with what we've been given, what we've been called to do, but also we want to lead well and steward well with our volunteers and our teams and those who we're raising up to take over for us. So today's conversation is going to be about that. So I want to talk specifically about our volunteers and our teams and those that we bring in to work towards a common goal.
Yeah.
So my first question for you two is, let's talk about when we gather our volunteers, when we find our volunteers. What does that process look like for you guys when you're leading volunteers? Starting with the beginning, when volunteers come to you and they say, "Hey, I share in this vision and this goal. I want to be a part of this team." Is it everyone's welcome, or do you go through a process? And even to the end goal, like placing volunteers and how you discover where they're good and where they're gonna benefit the goal the most. So let's talk about volunteers first.
Okay, guys.
Yeah, you got
so
this, Crystal.
here's the thing. I have worked in college ministry. I've worked in children's ministry, and now working in a position where we are inviting students, young adults, to go and to serve the Lord. You have to have solid volunteer teams in order to see that done well. I think specifically for me and kids, and because whoever is leading our short-term trips and stewarding our young adults and our college students, I like to hear their true passion and vision. Usually people are so excited. They had just heard a message from the stage about go and see Crystal and ask about volunteering in EGC Kids, or they've heard through the grapevine that we're looking for leaders for trips, and they're so excited. And so usually their passion is real. Their love for it is real. But their goals may not be similar to ours. So sharing expectations, sharing goals, and then understanding their strengths is so important. And so I love walking through a simple application where I'm looking at their heart, things that they've done, things that they love to do, their vision, and then our goals, and sharing my vision, my goals, and my heart for that very mission. And so usually once you flesh out those things, you're finding yourself at a place where you're like, either this person is ready to serve or they are not. And it is very clear.
Yeah, that's good. I think one of the things that I do because a lot of my job is recruiting and finding people. So like going to the very beginning when you're starting, when I talk with a lot of leaders, one of their frustrations is volunteers, is finding the people to serve. They're like, there's so many needs, there's so many things. What do we say? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And so it's like, how do I get volunteers? But you don't just want anybody, right? You want the right people. Because you can take anybody, but then it's a mess, and it creates more work for you as a leader.
Promise.
Yes, it does. It really does in the long run. And so what I've learned to do was, one, as a leader, to recruit is you have to lead with vision.
Yeah.
You don't lead with the need. Obviously, you have to explain the need, but you have to lead with vision, because people want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. They want to know, what part do I have to play in fulfilling this great story or this greater story that God is doing? And so people just run after vision, and they can see themselves there. They can picture themselves there. You're creating, was it the preferred future of what it would look like? With their giftings and their callings. And so you lead with that vision. Yeah. And from that, then you want to steward the people that God brings to you. As the Global Ministries team, when we first started out, we had 4 people on our team. And we were praying and thinking about, okay, God, we feel like you want to have a new missions movement. You want to grow our team. And God really brought us to Luke 10:2, which is about pray and ask the Lord of the harvest to send forth laborers into his harvest fields. And so it was that realization that, like, hey, we can cast all the vision we want, but it's God who moves on people's hearts. Yeah. And so as leaders, what we did is we committed ourselves to say, hey, we're going to come before you, Lord, in prayer and asking you to send the laborers, you to send the volunteers, you to send the need. We're going to cast the vision. We're going to talk about it. But really, we're going to trust that you're going to bring the right people to us, because when God brings the right people to you, then it's God's problem. Right. If you're like trying to, because what you don't want to do as a leader is you don't want to manipulate people to come and serve or twist their arm, because then they feel obligated and there's not a joy, there's not a passion. They're calling you last minute the day before they're supposed to serve, like, oh, Aunt Betty's in town, and you're like, what? Like, you knew you were on the schedule. And so it's that thing of saying, okay, God, can you move on people's hearts? Can you move on people's hearts to come and serve as we cast the vision, trusting that God's going to move on people's heart to join you, the right people. Right. And then, like I said, you facilitate what the Lord is doing. But for me as a leader, when I think to the very beginning, it's praying first. Like, prayer is number one. Asking God, these are my needs. These are the volunteers. Think big. Like I said, we start off with 4 people on our team. We now have 21 people on our team. And 75% of them raise their own support to be on our team, because we don't have the money to pay 21 people to serve. But it's like they heard the vision. The vision was cast, and God moved on their hearts. And they said, look, I'm going to raise support to join this team because the cause is so great. The vision is so great. And when you can do that, you just facilitate then what God is moving. Yeah. That was a lot.
No, but like the main thing out of that, y'all better be praying. Yeah. Like, it's the prayer. It's the prayer, and to pray big prayers. I've learned that from Jodi and from Alex. Yes. It's to pray big prayers. Pray specific prayers over your volunteers, and they will come. Yeah. There is, the Lord of the harvest, Luke 10:2, right on your walls right now, and or in the workspace that you go to for your volunteers. My volunteers all know that I come in Sunday morning an hour before to pray through my rooms, to pray for my kids, but really to pray for my volunteers, to hear from Holy Spirit and pour out what He is like laying on their hearts. But when looking for the volunteers, pray.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back to just even the people that we've added to Elim Fellowship in the past 2 years, or at least since I've been there. And every person I'm thinking of started with like a prayer for that person first. Like, we didn't have in mind who, like, it wasn't like we're specifically praying for Crystal to come into this position. We just prayed like, God, this is a need we have. Send us who you have for this position. And every time, like, God provides the right person that shares in our vision, but also adds to it in such a way that, like, exceeds our expectations. And I think that's very evident in the way that Elim Fellowship is moving forward too. So,
ooh, that's good.
Jodi, you talked about recruiting, and I know that's a passion of yours. I was even thinking earlier today, like, if we were going to make like a word wall of like all the words that describe Jodi, I feel like recruiting would be on that wall too. It's such a passion that you talk about all the time, and you love to learn more about it and how you can best serve GM Global through recruiting. So what are some keys? What are some tips you have when it comes to recruiting staff?
When it comes to recruiting staff, yes, there's many tips. The first one is you as a leader need to know what you want, what you're looking for, and you need to be clear. So it's like we call them avatars. So it's like, hey, if we could have in this position, what is our avatar of the best possible person we could fill? Like, we think of giftings, we think of skill sets, we think of, like, you can get specific. Like we can think of like age ranges, like, hey, we'd love to have someone in this age range and have this skill. So it starts with you as a leader saying, okay, what do I want? What am I looking for? One of the things I do in my role is I work with other missionaries for their placement. So the first thing I do is say, what are you looking for? What do you need? What are the job roles? What are the job responsibilities? Because you also want it clear for the person that you're communicating to what they're going to be doing. No one likes to get into a job and be like, what am I doing? Like, what? It's like hazy. It's like foggy. And you're like, am I winning? Am I not winning?
Yeah.
And so the first thing I always say is you need to be clear. So with your teams, with yourself, if you're the only one and you want to create a team, just vision board. Like vision board out specifics of an avatar, the different positions, the different needs. Like Crystal was saying, like, the sky's the limit. Just think, God, if I would have like 30 volunteers, what would they be doing? And then once you have that avatar, you begin to pray into that. 2 is like, you need to have an application. You need to have it.
Don't
like,
just take anybody.
Don't just take anybody. I've done that. There was a season in ministry where it was like, we were so desperate for volunteers that I was like, anybody that came, it's like, we'll take you. Yeah. But then it was just a mess. And it was just so much more work for us on the end, the long run. And so when you have an application, you are able to weed out like, hey, who are they called? Are they gifted? Do they have character? Character is a big one. We've seen that in the church recently all the time is like, you know, I think Sister Sylvia Evans or someone says, like, your calling will take you where your character can't hold you. That was probably the wrong saying.
Sorry, Sister Sylvia.
Sorry, Sister Sylvia. I love you. I did pay attention in your class. But it's that thing that character will hold you. And then a big one that I always look for is chemistry. Do they have chemistry with your team? Because people can have all the calling, the character. They can have, like, everything can look good on a resume. But when they mix with your team, it's like, either it's like a no-go, like it's awkward, they're not vibing. It's like, because so many times nowadays, like I was reading in Harvard Business Review, anyways, but they were saying companies now, I know, aren't I fancy? Companies.
It took a second.
It took Harvard Business Review.
Harvard Business
I like to pretend like I went to Harvard. No. But they were saying how Fortune 500 companies now are hiring people with better EQs over the ones with better IQs. So emotional intelligence over intelligence. I don't know. So like people so if someone's applying for a job and this person on paper, they have the degree, they have all the stuff, but this other person, they don't have that, but they have a higher EQ, emotional intelligence of relating to people. They say like 9 out of 10 times, I'm not sure if that's the right one, but something very high, is that the Fortune 500 companies will pick the person with the higher EQ. Because they say we can teach them what they need to know for the job. Like we can teach them that, but EQ is really hard to learn. I'm not saying you can't learn it. So we look for character, calling, and chemistry. So having that application, having that time for you to sit down with them, but also for them to interact with your team, like, is a big deal. And getting feedback from your team members, like, are they a good fit? Like, what do you think? Some things.
I told Jodi when we saw the recruiting question, I'm like, Crystal, I'm not a recruiter. I don't want warm bodies on the bus. I want the right bodies on the bus. I want the right people for the job. When she said earlier, God asked the people. Yeah. God, when you make it God's business, then it's his problem. And so I just simply put out the invitation. They fill out the application. They do all the hard work. And if the Lord's like, no go, go, I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. But that was so good. What's your 3 C's? I love alliteration.
Character, calling, chemistry.
Wow.
Yes.
I love that.
That's what you look for.
A sermon.
Yeah.
A sermon was just born.
Probably is a sermon somewhere, because I know I got it from somebody.
I know I got it from somebody.
I don't know.
And if you're watching and that's your sermon, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give you credit.
DM, I was going to say, just drop it in the comments. We'll
Thank you for
that. It's so true.
As leaders, I think one of the most important attributes of a leader is managing their ministry and they stay busy and handling that well. But I think also taking the time to look out in front of you
Bless you.
I was going to tell you I was going to sneeze, but I held it in. It's good.
That was a holy moment.
It was a whole moment.
Thank you,
We
Jesus.
invite you, Holy Spirit.
Is looking out at your team and also paying attention to, okay, we brought them in for this, but I'm starting to notice they have this gifting and these talents and the abilities to do this. So how do we as leaders prioritize that so we're paying attention to those things, but then also come alongside them and say, I see this in you, I'm going to call this out in you, and also help you so you can lead with this.
So good.
So I have a very ready example because last night after a crazy day, I had a volunteer who has just been burning to serve in a very administrative way, but I thought it was the most boring thing in the world. She's like, I want to do the lesson planning for the kids. I love the lessons. And we've had a little bit of transition. And so the person that normally would be doing the lessons isn't anymore. And I am now writing lessons. And I'm like, not built for that. And so she's like, I've always wanted to do this. And I was like, great. And so we're sitting down and we're talking. And she said, I get so nervous whenever I teach the kids. This is like my favoriteest thing ever, knowing that they're going to be taught this, and that. Like, she came alive.
Nice.
Thinking about lessons, thinking about teaching them, not teaching them, thinking about preparing the teachers to teach them. And she's like, and I just never was built for this. And the reason why she'd ever tried teaching was because one of the main things of kids ministry was that you had to try it. We all are going to try things. It's like getting your kids to eat vegetables. You got to try it once and then I won't make you eat it again. But for her, she's like, I just wanted to keep trying it to see if maybe the nerves would wear off. And they didn't. And she's like, I'm thriving writing lessons.
Yes.
I'm thriving doing that. And it was this amazing moment where I was like, I can look back on her application, I can look back on her interview and see that administrative skills was something she marked very high. I can also look back on her wanting to grow and communicating and speaking. And so leveraging that and seeing like, okay, this is her strength.
Yes.
How can we utilize that and make her feel so empowered? And so now she's sitting in the right role. She is no longer going to the classroom to teach, but she is going into the classroom to equip our teachers.
Really
and
nice.
it is so much fun. So that example, all to say out of that example, I would say, first of all, list out their strengths and weaknesses. I have a list beside my volunteer list beside their name, and the Excel sheet is their strengths and their weaknesses, where they thrive and where they die a little bit. Because that's the thing, is if they're not operating out of passion and out of desire, like you can give them as much vision and try to give them your passion, they will never have it. They're not you. They aren't me, and they aren't who you want them to be. They're not Sally, who is just outspoken and excited about everything. Nothing against you, Sally. I don't actually have a Sally that works for me, but if there's one out there, sorry. But
You're doing a great job, Sally.
You're doing a great job, Sally. We love your excitement. But I have to see that, because every week when I go to look for something, there's some people that just are fired up about experiences and building experiences for the kids and building experiences for teams. And so my very practical example, again, in GM right now, we are getting ready to send out a short-term mission trip this July to Eastern Africa. And it is a very physically demanding trip. And the Lord sent us the perfect person to lead this trip. He is a physical trainer. He is built for this. And he is going to test and evaluate his team before they can go to the bush, because you have to be able to wade through rivers and drive in a Humvee for excellent amount of time to serve these unreached people. And like literally sometimes it comes to like your physical gifts. Like just really, you have to find out what they're good at and what they're not good at. And it's not a bad thing to not be good at everything. Because I used to want to be good at everything, so I would always be desired to like serve in every role. But now I realize that I don't have to be good at everything, because the things that I'm really good at are worth the things that I'm not. And it's
so
okay.
Good. That's so
It's okay.
Good. It's true. It's very true. I think for me as a leader, one of the things I do like in the application process very early on is I have my teams do, I call it the SHAPE assessment. It's a free online assessment.
Yes.
S.H.A.P.E. SHAPE assessment. And really, it's a chance for you to get to know your volunteers on a deeper level. So it goes over, like, what's their testimony, what are their giftings, what are their callings, what are their passions. And so from that is, like, I'm getting to know my volunteers. So it's not just, like, I'm not just seeing them as a body to fill a position, but I'm seeing them as, God, how have you created them? How have you wired them? Because as part of a leader, I want to steward what God has given me. And I want to push my volunteers up and forward and launch them into something, because they might not be with me forever. And that's fine. Like, if I can raise them up and launch them to go further or to go to something else, like, that's fantastic.
That is
because I know that then God's going to bring me someone else, and you kind of do the rotation again. But I do shape assessments, which really, like I said, gets to help me know their giftings, calling, passions. As a leader, you need to not be so busy and consumed with the details that you don't have time to sit down with your volunteers. Because you need to use your ears and listen to them and ask them those questions. It just starts with a question like, hey, what are you passionate about? If you could do anything for this ministry, what would you want to do? And then from there, you'll actually probably get a lot of amazing ideas that you never had, or they can run with stuff that you never even pictured, which is what I love to do. So
that's so good. That's so good. I would also recommend the How to Lead When You're Not in Charge for your volunteers. That book is so good. It empowers people to be thinking as if they're the leaders, but without the leadership title or role. And it just releases them again to see, like, where are they leading? Like, what are they good at?
Yeah, I think one of the things I also do is, once I know someone's gifting or passion, I look for training opportunities for them. So it doesn't mean I have to train them, but I look for connections. Like Crystal and my girl Ashley, who are on my team, we just did a women's speaking event. And I'm like, I know you both have a passion to speak and teach, and you have that anointing and calling. So I'm going to pay for you to go to this event. So it's taking the time and the money to invest in those that are on your team. And it's like, even on Global Ministry at EF, we have it built into our budget, staff, I don't know if it's called education. I don't remember what the budget line is, something like that. So it's like that where I can pay for people to go through a process, to go through something so that they can get further training. And I think that speaks volumes to them, and they just see you then as a leader, as someone who believes in them. And it just goes a long way.
It does.
Constantly pouring into our volunteers. Like, they're not here just so what we can get out of them and get everything out of them. There's like this constant pouring of resources and spending time with them.
That's so good.
Yeah. So to wrap up this conversation that we've had today, what are ways that we can empower our teams to move forward towards that goal, towards that destination that we have our eyes set on?
That's good. I'll go first, then you can.
You go. I have mine. It's set in my head.
Okay, what are ways we can empower teams? Number one, I always think of myself as a leader, and I have to be releasing. Because as a leader, you have a vision of what you want it to look like, of what you want it to be, of what you want. You have this picture, right? And you have the ways that you like to do things, that you prefer to do things. But your volunteers have other giftings and passions, and they will accomplish the same goal, but maybe in a different way. And so in order to empower them, you have to be releasing. You have to release control, not complete control, but over certain things. Like, it's like, is the end goal, vision still being accomplished, still moving forward? And it might look different. So you have to be okay with that. So you need to release control, but you also need to give them authority to make decisions, because there's teams that I've been on or situations where I've been given a title, but I haven't necessarily been given authority. You need to give them a title and an authority, because if they don't have an authority, the title is worthless, right? It's like, I still can't make any final calls. I still can't make any decisions. Like, I have to run everything by this leader, like each minute detail. And it's like, and people then don't come to me. They still go to the other person. And so you need to release title and authority to the people. And what you'll notice is it takes a lot of time and investment on you in the beginning. But in the end, it's so amazing, because you're just multiplying your life, and you're being able to release people. And to give them, like I said, that releasing control, very hard, release control, give titles, give authority, and allow people to fail. Allow people to make mistakes. and learn from them, but don't create such an environment where they're too afraid to fail or they're too afraid to make mistakes. Because if you do that, then no one's going to want to step out. No one's going to want to, like, you know, because they're going to be like, if I make a mistake, I'm out, or I'm going to get lambasted or whatever, and just realize that's part of the process. I forget what your question was, but I really hope I answered it.
That made me think of my 6-year-old daughter came up to me today. She goes, Mom, there's this quote on the wall in my school, and it says, failing means you tried.
Oh,
and I just loved that.
That's so
that's being ingrained in 6-year-olds. And I was like, that needs to be like in every grocery store too, and wherever in churches and where adults go, because I think we skipped that message for a few years, and it's so important. And that's why I said I'm just so glad that she's starting to get that that failing means that you tried. Like you put in an attempt to do something, and it might have not worked out the way you wanted, but it was still a step, and not just staying still. So yeah, I loved that. What about you?
I love that so much.
But
I love that
you had it.
Oh yes, I have it right here. There are 2 things that I think is
I
so
don't even
good
remember the question, so
about
you go for it.
empowering our
There it
leaders,
is, there it is,
empowering our
okay.
people. Number 1, once you pass the stage of training them, of teaching them, release them.
Yes.
And like make sure that they're actually released. I had a volunteer who I have spent a month training. And this person is amazing. Absolute greatest human ever. Very like, Crystal, am I released to start doing this? And I was like, have you not been doing that? And I was like, crap. Like I was still walking alongside them each week. And I didn't realize that I was holding them back and not holding their hand. I thought I was supporting them by doing that. Like, no. Like teach them, train them, walk with them, release them. It is an absolute must-have for empowering our leaders. And then the number 2 is just as important as the number 1, is celebrate them.
Oh, that's good.
Celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
Celebrate the little things. They need it.
Yeah.
They need it. Right now, I am looking at different ways to celebrate my volunteers and to celebrate my team, both at EF and EGC, because everyone has just gone through a season of where they have been alone and isolated, and the wins have been celebrated by the little emojis on Zoom.
Yeah.
The clappies. It's like, good job, the thumbs up, the encouraging text messages. Like, people don't need more things where they're not interacting with people. At the same time, like, people are super busy. And so what is that intentional time worth thing? Because time is like the most expensive thing that people have to give to us. So the fact that people want to serve blows my mind. And is also just God. And so I'm like, how do I value their time and honor them and celebrate them? So hitting them up with an email, I like to make it an Oreo. So I hit them up with an email. I may personalize a text, but then I'm going to make sure that there's something in person that they're getting and receiving from me that says, Crystal loves me. She sees me. She sees that I am serving. And it better be intentional. I'm not talking about a slice of pizza. Anybody over the age of 18 does not want to work for pizza anymore. I'm telling you that is a PSA that needs to be posted and plastered on walls. But like,
you're offending people right now.
I know. I need to stop. Stop while I'm ahead. But yeah, no, the intentionality of it. So release them and celebrate them.
Because you don't want them to feel used. Like, you want them to feel like they're a valuable member of your team.
Yep. It's true. I thought of a Bible verse that I actually wanted to share with y'all.
Okay.
And this is my last thing. I just want to.
Yes.
I'm gonna read it straight up from my phone because it just is everything. It's in Psalms 125. Okay. It is so lovely, and I'm just gonna read you verse 1 because, and I guess I could recite it because I know it. But it says, "Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion. They will be secure and they will last forever." When we are asking our volunteers when we are asking God to entrust us with volunteers, we cannot be unstable ground. We cannot be like a sandy beach. We cannot be ever shifting. Like, we need to be like Mount Zion. We need to trust in the Lord and just stay secure in that. Because, like, volunteers are going to come and go.
Yes. Yes, they will.
Employees will come and go.
Yes.
And but God's faithfulness never will. And it will look different in every season. Right now, I have more volunteers that are willing to volunteer in administrative roles than actual physical roles. I've never had that in my...
People watching are like, can you send them my way? I'm like, send them my way, please. Give me those names.
It has never happened in
That's
all my
amazing.
years. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, thank you so much, Jesus. At the same time, I'm like, I need actual physical body. So I'm continuing to go to the Lord of the harvest and say, God, will you bring me these very specific things that I need? And just standing firm. And so thank you for this, Taryn. This is so good. I've learned from you, Jodi.
I've learned from you. And from you.
And from you.
And from your daughter.
I was going to say,
And from your
Eliza.
And for my children as well. Yes, I hope you've learned something as well. We're interested to hear your thoughts. If you want to leave a comment, even answer some of these questions in your own words would be really helpful to us as well. And while you're here on our YouTube page, don't forget to check out our one-day playlist. Yes. We have the 3 sessions on there as well, and past Let's Talks. Feel free to share them with your family and friends and your teams and your volunteers and whoever God puts on your heart right now to share these videos with. And we'll see you at our next Let's Talk.
Bye, guys.